Can you hear me? Yeah? Can you hear us? You probably will want to say, just turn it down, but if you're doing us a favour. Hello everybody, I have met some of you before. I'm here on behalf of Cruz Bereavement Care. We are Cruz Bereavement Support now, which is how I first met with Soft Jenny. And it was quite a long time ago, wasn't it, Jenny? It was about 10 years ago. And I was asked if I would come along here and facilitate a difficult discussion about ending a pregnancy. And there would be one thing that hopefully we would take from this, which is there's no right or wrong in this. It can at times feel very divisive within families, within relationships. But it's just about opening up this difficult dialogue. I'm here as a conduit. The wisdom here is in the room. And so, what I have an email. Have you all, I don't know if you've all met Mrs. Caroline? We only met about 3/4 of an hour ago, didn't we? You're sorry you came in now.
I am now starting.
I've travelled all this way.
Myself in for you.
Travelled all this way to meet up with this mad old bat. Sean, I'm sure that you will have met or seen before. And Una, do you want to say something about yourself?
I'm Una McFadden, I'm a paediatrician, retired paediatrician. I've been with Soft since way back at the start. I'm from Professor Ian Young, who I work with in Leicester. He is a professor of genetics, or was now retired. And he came to talk to me when I was a senior registrar in Leicester to say that he needed some help to help parents who had come to him as a geneticist, having been told by someone that their baby's condition is incompatible with life. And he said that he didn't know what to say to these families. And could I help, because their babies were alive and they hadn't expected them to be alive. I was a neonatal paediatrician, and I was seeing some of these babies and families, and the words incompatible with life were a barrier to any progress. We weren't making progress because the family had an expectation given by those words, and reality was different. And so getting over that was basically like saying, don't use those words. But the words were in textbooks. They were the way that many doctors were being taught about trisomy 15 and 18. And they were giving the family, the parents, the information as best they could. And really, we started from there with the families telling us what they felt might be helpful. And thankfully, I found Soft and Jenny and Christy, who were developing information in a way that made sense to families, and which were not a barrier, but actually as we could call it, to see how can we move forward with this member of our family who has arrived, or who we've lost during the pregnancy, where the baby hasn't been able to survive, but the baby is still a person and has been part of our family. And so really we've worked together ever since to try and to be a go-between and to explain to families how professionals may have come to where they are, and to tell professionals that this is where families are coming from. Sometimes it's quite a challenge to bring the two together. So that's why I'm still here. I'm very retired. I work with a network in Scotland called Children with Exceptional Health Care Needs for SEND, which includes many of the babies, children, now young people who have trisomies or other rare conditions. So
Oh, thank you. And crikey, when I say the wisdom in this room, I think you've just proved that very much so. I'm wondering, Sean, do you think it would be a good idea, I'll have to open the phone. I had an email from a lovely lady who was unable to attend today, and we had hoped that she would be able to join this discussion. Just hang on to that.
Yeah.
She sent me an email earlier this morning, and I've run that by everybody.
If anybody who wants to hear her story as well, so we'll go through the email now. She actually shared a podcast with us at the beginning of the year as well to tell her story, so I'll have that linked in the video recording as well, and then next week or afterwards, because again, all these stories need to be shared. They help to remove a taboo, and they help to remove some of that isolation. That's one of the things that we're able to do today.
Thank you. This is from Rachel. Because I asked her yesterday if there was anything that she would like me to contribute to today's session. The main thing I would like to say is that it was the hardest and most heartbreaking decision I have ever had to make, and I wouldn't wish it on anyone. We as parents felt we took our son's pain and suffering and took it ourselves. Our son was wanted and a loved baby, and never did we think this would happen to us. He's changed us forever, and we will always miss him. I have been open about what has happened, and I feel it's so important to raise awareness about the subject. The TFMR is more common than miscarriage and stillbirths combined, which is quite unbelievable, as I have never heard of the term before. One last thing I would like to add is that as parents, none of us should feel guilty for whatever decision we made. If we continue with our pregnancy or not, we all share the same grief that comes with losing a child. I once heard someone say that we had done the best we could with the information we had at the time, and I think that's extremely important to remember when we have these conversations. And Barbara, I'm very disappointed I couldn't be here today. And Caroline, we looked at this email, and I thought, because your response, and there was some reflections on this from your perspective. Do you want to reflect on those?
Yeah, I guess I was reflecting on the comment around guilt, and I'm not sure that it's a decision that can ever be completely separated from feelings of guilt. I guess from my perspective, I don't believe I would make a different decision now, but I still feel really conflicted about it. And I just don't think you would ever be able to completely feel guilt-free about it, because it's almost going against the natural order of things as parents, as a mother. You are biologically programmed to protect at all costs, and the brutal fact is that you have elected to not continue with a pregnancy, and that's in very, very cold terms but the whole process of having children and going through pregnancy is a pathway of feelings and warmth and hormones and all of those things, which is probably where we have a difference with our clinical colleagues who are very much dealing with facts and the current position, whereas as parents, you just don't navigate the way through that process, because it's your loved one, your child, and you have all of those protective feelings that you're in essence going against. So I think it's hugely confusing, and even for me some years later, and the fact that I'm happy with the decision and I don't regret the decision, and it was right for us at the time, I would be doing a disservice if I didn't say there was a lot of back and forth, you know, in terms of the whole situation, really. And for me, it wasn't a case of making a decision around whether we could support looking after a child with profound, complex needs. For us, we were told, whilst I was lying on a sonographer's bed covered in goop, that the pregnancy wasn't viable. And I knew it wasn't, because I'd had a scan previously and I felt very, very different in this pregnancy. And they were telling me, the sonographer was telling me that the pregnancy wasn't as far along as I thought it was, but I knew when I conceived. You know, we had a young child, so it doesn't happen very often. So I knew exactly when that had happened. And they were saying, no, you're not as far along as you think you are. And I was thinking, she's not right. So I knew that the development wasn't where it should be. And then I felt very, very different. And although I was given options, I knew that the outcome was going to be the same. So I guess for me it was around making a decision about when that end came, I guess. Which again, in cold terms, was, I guess, around what was convenient, for want of a better word, for us. But I did know that there was only one outcome.
Caroline, I can't thank you enough for sharing your family experience with the room. That was so eloquently described. And I'm just wondering, Sean, is there anything that you want to?
Yeah, so interesting, Caroline, you were one of the first people that we spoke to properly about this, and it all came at the back end of last year when we realised as SOFT, obviously we've always taken an impartial stance. In fact, we will support families regardless, and we don't push in any direction. We're just there to listen and to talk and to help people through that process. But actually, when we looked at the stories we were sharing, the videos we were sharing, the podcasts we were sharing, there was a lot about, in fact overwhelmingly about, everybody choosing to continue with their pregnancy despite the fact that we were supporting so many people who were in a very different place. And what would happen is at the end of that support, we would lose contacts. And there's already enough stigma, there's already enough taboo in society that that's not something that we wanted to carry anymore as soft. And that's when we reached out, and Kate put out a very, very blunt post. We talked about it for a long time about what sort of language should we put out when we ask for these stories, and how should we phrase it. And we came to the conclusion the only way to do this is to do it right and not try to beat around the bush and to flower it up. And Kate did a great job of that. She's very straight talking, so she put out the post. And Caroline got in contact with us and shared her story and her experience. And it brought to light so much more. And you started snowball effects. Your story then brought more stories to us. And we now have not the best library in the world in terms of stories, and there's still so much work for us to be done. But you started something, and you encouraged other people to share, and they came through, and that got other people to share. And we started to see that change. We now have a Facebook group where people will come through, and they will talk, and slowly, hopefully, we will continue to remove some of that taboo, to make it a safe place, because that's part of our value base. And it was something that you really helped us to recognise. And in those conversations, you were very blunt with us and very honest, and we absolutely valued that, but we needed it. It gave us the kick up the bottom that we needed to make that change. So I just want to say thank you. And I'm sure the families out there as well who've heard your story, and the story that followed on from yours as well, would like to say thank you as well. And we have heard now from more and more people that they feel more open to talking to us, and more people have come back through to us as well to seek support and to find out more as well about what we can do to help them. So it has made a change. And with this climate at the moment, there is so much division because of what is happening out there at the moment. And people don't realise that their views that they put online, actually, they might be dividing the family themselves because they don't realise that their sister has maybe gone through something, but because of that social taboo that exists, their sister hasn't shared that story because they don't feel that they're able to. And suddenly, they don't speak to their brother anymore because of something that he put online without realising. And that's what we want to change. We want to change it and make it a safer place for people to share those stories. Because, like you said, with that incredible stat, it is so much more common than we expect. And it is not a flippant choice. And that is, again, something that we really, really want to communicate. There are so many layers to this, so many different factors, that unless you walk that path, you don't understand. And even if you walk that path, somebody else's path that walks something similar will have to make a different choice because there are so many other layers to their own situation. And that's what we're trying to do. And that's why today's session is so vitally important, and this will continue to be a vitally important part of what Soft UK do in the future.
Well, you definitely didn't need me here in this room, did you? Thank you so much, Sean. Una, is there anything that you would like to add?
I think to thank Caroline for what she said and to see how much insight she's able to share about what it felt like to be a woman, a mother, thinking through the consequences of a decision. And I think it's sad that we call that guilt, because it's not guilt, it's reflection and an awareness of the impact of facing those decisions and making the right decision for you and your pregnancy, and putting up a flag for your partner, because I think sometimes it's hard for the two people to be able to understand each other in that situation. And I think I know the gender awareness unit, I'm anxious not to say the wrong thing about genders, but just if there are two people making a baby, and they both have their own individual feelings. And I think what Caroline said about the hormones and the effect of pregnancy, all these things are affecting one of those partners, but the other partner has their own view of becoming a parent, whether that's a positive or maybe negative view. And to be able to listen to each other. I was saying to somebody that I listened to Michael Rosen, the author, talking to someone whose 12-year-old daughter had said, "Are you listening to understand or listening to reply?" And that is just so difficult for people to really listen to understand each other. And I think it's something that none of us do enough of. And I can imagine between partners to actually be able to stand up as Caroline's done and think about what am I feeling as a person, and then to listen to what my partner's feeling as a person. And maybe they'll be different, and not to feel that you've got to feel the same, but you've got to understand each other to be able to move on to whatever decision you're going to make. The other thing which occurred to me was how similar, in fact, that range of feelings sounds to what the parents of a surviving baby or child might have to feel when there's a sudden deterioration and you're facing possibly end-of-life decisions and when to stop. And I think what we've heard on the media recently about some controversial cases, your heart goes out to everyone involved because there are so many people there who need to listen to understand. So I think, Caroline, again, huge thanks for being so aware of what is human.
It's human, and it is humanness, isn't it, that is so vitally important in this. And I have been thinking that I think we live in the world possibly through social media. I'm an old man, I'm nearly 75. But so much social media, I think, has increased the divisive nature of society. And we're not as able as maybe we were previously to kind of meet middle ground just by having respect for each other. And that is what is so important for us to consider. And this can be a very divisive issue within families. And it might be also to do with faith, with culture, because that will come into this issue as well, sadly. But opening up this difficult dialogue is the most important thing we can do about this. And I'm wondering, is there anybody that would like to ask Caroline or Sean or Una any questions or give any thoughts from your experience?
Thanks. Thank you very much again, Caroline. I'm Jane Fisher and I'm here as a guest, and it's lovely to be here. I'm the Director of Antenatal Results and Choices, or ARC for short.
Yes.
And we support parents through prenatal diagnosis and decisions they make. We also provide specialist support to those who end pregnancy, because we're the only charity providing that support across the board. And just to echo really what Caroline said, that so many women say to us that it's the most difficult decision they've ever faced, and it's a decision that feels counterintuitive because it's a decision made with love for their baby and for the family that's in the world too. So thank you, Caroline. Thank you to SOFT for opening up this conversation, because I can understand it's not an easy one to have, and we're right here shoulder to shoulder with you. So thank you.
Crikey, thank you so much. There certainly is a lot of wisdom in this room, isn't there? Does anybody else want to reflect on? Marlene? Oh.
Is it working? Yeah. Caroline, I just wanted to thank you. It was 11 years ago that I was pregnant and my son was diagnosed when I was 17 and a half weeks pregnant. And obviously I had the decision to make, and over the four or 5 weeks, I can't tell you how many times I changed my mind. And the amount of families that I spoke to, most of them had continued at that point, or those are the ones who were speaking out. And I ended up continuing as well. And Logan was stillborn when I was 38 weeks pregnant. And obviously everything happens for a reason, and everything happens the way it's supposed to be. As people say that I just wonder, I still wonder now if there had been more people speaking out, if that would have been a bad decision, and I just think it's great that you're here and you're speaking about it. So thank you.
Oh,
Thank you, Marlene.
Going back to me, just thinking, Marnie, what you just said, I think ties in with the way that Karen was describing feeling what's right for you and your pregnancy. And I talked with other mums who felt they didn't want to end the pregnancy, they wanted to continue, and Karen just made me realise that that is something that nobody's going to be able to tell you how you want to feel. To you feel the way you feel, and the decision that you make is based on Mummy's genes saying, and it's really important that whoever you're talking to understands that, and that's hard when you're in a number of professionals, to actually speak up for how you feel as a person. But it's so important that when you have the, I don't know if it's courage or assertiveness or what it is, but to really move forward. We talk about shared decision making, and it's only shared if it's equal. That you are more important than the professionals. That you are not like to admit that you are, and you're certainly equal to the professionals. So you're not on the receiving end, you're sharing the decision.
Absolutely. And also, I think really important what you were saying is that dads also have to really be taken into account here. With Crew's bereavement support, I've worked with a lot of families, and a lot of dads, usually dads, not always, sometimes mum, who with their role in their family, they thought, I've got to be strong. I've got to be the strong one for my family. And I've got to get Archie a vote again. I've got to be that. But who's supporting you, matey? Who's supporting you? So don't leave yourself out of the picture if you are the strong one in the family. We all need to grieve and process our loss in our own way. And is there anybody else who would like to reflect on anything? Or I will come to it. But you go in, because you can move much quicker than me.
This is probably going to sound really not articulate or relevant compared to what everyone else has said already, but I was just really struck. What struck me when I was going through pregnancy and all the screening and diagnostic process was just how little awareness there is around the trajectory of basically the presentation pregnancy, the science, and how society views it. That there's this sense that you have a 12-week scan, you celebrate, there's the announcement, and it's just like, that's great, congratulations. But in so many instances, that just isn't early enough to know if baby is healthy or not. And just naming that sometimes you can be in a situation where you have announced, and we say congratulations, you've got a bump being showing, and you can be on this roller coaster and have all these people come up to you with really good intentions and just feel this pressure, and it's really overwhelming. And I just feel like, for me, that was one of the things that I certainly found very hard during the pregnancy, that I had this bump, people talking to me about it, either assuming things were okay, or that I'd have a definitive answer about baby's health, and you just didn't, and you didn't quite know how to respond to that. So I just feel like there's lots of work in terms of aligning, say, where the science is at, and what our understanding is when people make these moral judgments about, oh, well, that's plenty of time to know whether you want a baby, and all these misconceptions about terminations and medical reasons, and just speaking out about that. That's all I wanted to add.
Thank you so much. Thank you. What was your name? Sorry.
Sorry?
Tina. Tina.
Sarah.
Okay. Sorry. For hearing as well. Anybody else? Oh, of course.
My name's Sonia, and we had our little girl Liana last June, and she was born with trisomy 13, and we had her for 5 weeks. and we were really lucky, and our experience was a really positive one. We didn't know that she had the issues to the extent that she did until I was around 29 weeks pregnant. And I continued with that pregnancy. I was feeling her move, I was showing. I'd been in the position as well where I'd shared the pregnancy with everyone, not knowing what was happening. I am glad that I went through with the pregnancy, but actually it was sort of ended up for me, it was sort of I didn't feel like I could do anything else at that point. And our experience with her was lovely. I fell pregnant again this year actually. Unfortunately that ended in miscarriage, but we were in the position where we knew that there could be a possible issue again. And I was very much thinking about the possibility of termination at that time too. That decision ended up I didn't end up having to make that decision. 11 weeks it was found that the baby had already gone at the 11-week scan. I'm glad that I didn't have to make that decision. It would have been a really hard one to make. And I think I would have ended up making that decision on my own with my immediate family. And I'm so glad that someone like you, Caroline, has been able to share this today. And Soft UK are also really trying to put this out there to let people know exactly, that there are people that are experiencing similar situations. Because I think I probably would have ended up going through that on my own. But to know that there's people out there that are willing to talk and share is really important, so thank you.
I think it's great you have that awareness and that you're thinking ahead for if you want to try again. I had another child afterwards, and I'm quite happy to say I absolutely lost my marbles. I was terrified the whole way through. I'm very, very worried that the same thing was going to happen. But I actually had a great deal of support, so I was offered a really early scan. And there's nothing that anybody can do, but they were just trying to make me feel better, so I went and had an early pregnancy scan, and I could see a beating heart. And then it was just going through the pregnancy stage by stage, and they gave me an astronomical dose of folic acid. I was taking that, and nobody really knew if it was going to do anything that made me doctor feel better, So there was a lot of goodwill from people who couldn't do anything, but were really mindful of the situation and did their level best to make things as easier as they could be. And I wish you all the very, very best. And lots of love.
I think that is coming from the whole room as well, Caroline. Thank you.
I think that's, again, Caroline's hit another really positive thing to think about is when the people around you can't make the situation different, what can they do that will be helpful? Because I think sometimes as a professional you feel that you should be doing something to make this get better. And not being able to do that can make people seem quite defensive, sort of, as if they're avoiding the issue, whereas having something like folic acid or a weekly scan or a phone call is actually a positive thing to offer, but people might not know to offer it. So I think, again, coming from a group like Soft UK to say these things might be worth offering to a family facing this difficult decision. And they may seem very small things, but they may be really important. I don't know, Jean, if you have experience with a similar thing about just having that contact that does something, but isn't a big on-prescription medicine.
No, definitely, and it's, as you say, quite correctly, nothing anyone can do can change the situation. There's always going to be high levels of anxiety in a subsequent pregnancy because you've had a diagnosis, you know it's possible, and because of the shock and the trauma of that, you often think, well, that is going to happen again. It's bound to. It's happened once, it's going to happen again. No one can necessarily take that away, but that support, that being listened to, those extra touches can, I think, be helpful, definitely, when I experience it.
Absolutely, thank you so much. I am aware of the time, and we'll be coming up for lunch, is that?
No.
We've got another, oh, yes, I ought step on anybody else's toes. Obviously, we're all going to be around. If there are any thoughts that you would like to share, either with Caroline or Sean or Una or myself, find us somewhere in the room, and we can always be here. And the most important gift we can offer anybody is just to listen. Is to listen. So thank you so much for your time and your wisdom. So thank you, Caroline particularly. Could you give her a round? So proud of you. And so shall we